Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to domagettyielts.com IELTS writing task video with me, Trevor Gordon. In today's video, we're going to look at how we can score 7 or more in our writing tasks. So the all-important question is, how can you do it? Well, there are several ways that you can do it, and the following video is going to outline some of the things that you need to pay attention to be able to achieve this. So, if you're doing the IELTS, you will know that there are 4 criteria: task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy. To improve your score to level 7 or above level 7, one of the main things to focus on more is number 4, grammatical range and accuracy. This is one area where students don't achieve the 7, whereas they do in the other aspects, using enough vocabulary, covering all the parts of the topic, etc. But grammatical range is often not achieved because there are certain things that you have to do, and they're not always explained to you. Okay, so one of the main reasons why people have problems achieving above a band score 7 in the IELTS exam is that their grammar score does not match the other criteria. Often the task achievement is good, the lexical resource, vocabulary to you and I, and cohesion and coherence are scored well, but due to the lack of variety in the grammar, the overall score cannot be achieved. Now, the rubric is available for this, is available everywhere, so I've just put part of the rubric in here. Now, grammatical range and accuracy, that's what we're talking about. To get a 7, you need to use a variety of complex structures. Frequent error-free sentences, which of course, if their grammar is good, then it'll be error-free. Not 100% error-free, but frequently. Good control of grammar and punctuation, but may make a few errors. So to get a 7, obviously you're not going to have perfect English, perfect grammar, perfect. You don't need to, but you have to have it at a high level. So they're the ones for 8 and 9, but we're not interested in that at the moment. We're only focusing on getting a 7 or above, or a 7 actually. So here's the rubric for the grammar side of the scoring. You can see that band 7 requires that a variety of complex structures be used, whereas those bands above specify a wide range of structures. Having only a few different types of sentence structures suggests that this is good, but not good enough. This is often the difference between a band 7 and above. We're going to cover the wide range in this video. So we're going to look at some of the different sentence structures and grammar structures that you need to be able to score a 7. To illustrate, we're going to use a question topic from both task 1 and task 2. These have been chosen at random and can be applied to any essay. Task 1, the percentage spending of UK people between 1971 and 2001. Task 2, some people think that government should take care of old people. Others oppose this view. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So what we're going to do is look at some of the grammar that you need. We're not going to do the complete essays, because that's not what we need to do here. When writing an essay, the sentences you write are more restricted by topic in task 1, but less so in task 2. Task 2 is an essay. Task 1, you have to look at the information and reproduce it. So in task 1, for example, if you're writing about a process, then there will be mainly passive sentences. Whereas if you're writing about changes over time, then there will be more past simple adjective, noun or verb plus adverb sentences. If you're studying, you will know the structure of these for task 1. I can't think of any offhand, but there are plenty of videos that I've made that will show you these things. So this means that you need to include a wider range of sentences in other parts of your essay. You can't do it here because there is a limited structure, but in the rest of the essay, when you're talking about other things, you can expand your grammar. In task 2, you have no such restrictions as the topics are varied and allow for the complete range of sentence structures. We're now going to look up all of the sentence structures you should try to include in your essay to achieve a range of 7 or above. Sentences to include: simple sentences, there'll be several. Compound sentences, we use conjunctions. Complex sentences, this will employ different rules. Passive sentences, reverse of subject and object. So the focus is on what's receiving the action, not what's doing the action, which is a normal sentence, active sentence. Conditional sentences, where we create different scenarios which depend on each other, not depends. Okay, so let's look at a simple sentence. Subject, verb, object. People spent more on entertainment. Food and cars accounted for the highest percentage. Eating out was a minor expense. That's a simple sentence because it has subject, verb and object. These sentences have only one clause. Now a clause is a subject and a verb. That subject, verb, that's a clause. Subject, verb, that's a clause. Subject, verb, that's a clause. These are the most commonly used sentences in most essays. For many test takers, they need to answer the question, and often the main task for them is to convey the answer. This is best done in simple sentences for many for whom English is not their first language. This is how most people would answer the question, to get that, making sure they get the answer across, but obviously to get a high score in IELTS, this is just not enough. So you have to look at different things. Okay, so creating compound sentences using FANBOYS conjunction. This is the way to remember conjunctions. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. This is called FANBOYS. FANBOYS. So this is a way to remember it. So we can use these to join two clauses. Remember, a clause will have a subject-object. You can put clauses together in one sentence as long as you separate the clauses. So, using for, old people should take care of themselves, for the government has other issues. So, old people, subject, should, modal verb, take care. Subject, verb. The government, subject, has, verb. So we've got one clause here, and we're joining it with a conjunction. This is the pattern all the way through this exercise. People, subject, verb, people spent. This subject, covered, verb. subject, verb, subject, verb. We separate them with a conjunction. The government should not neglect, there's our verb, negative, nor should they prioritise. So subject, verb, we use nor, neither nor. But an average amount, subject, was spent, past tense. But less, subject, was spent. Verb, subject, verb. We separated the two clauses with but. Senior citizens could get, senior citizen subject could get verb. Or they, subject, could be subsidised, subject, verb. Yet, the older generation, subject, has done the most, present perfect, verb. Yet they are, they, subject, are, verb. So, the cost of car ownership, there's the subject, the cost of car ownership has soared, present perfect, so there's our verb. So, people, subject, are no longer buying, so there's our verb, no longer. Are is the verb, making it negative, continuous. Are buying, are no longer buying. Sorry. So, fanboys. This is how we make conjunctions. These are the most common conjunctions to add clauses together. You should be doing this. You should know how to do this. If you don't, you should practice this. Next thing is discourse markers. Linking sentence elements together. We use these things to link sentences together. After, although, as, because, before, since, provided that, unless, until. A whole variety of them. We use these to join elements of our sentences together. This will create complex sentences. You should employ some of the words above. Try to use at least 5 to 7 in your essay to create a wider range of sentences. Some examples we'll see on the next page. Example sentences using some of the discourse markers will constitute complex sentences. So here, begin. Although old people need to be taken care of, they shouldn't be a burden on society. So we're using although, we don't need it here, we put it at the beginning. So we have one clause, another clause. Because the government has a because the government has a responsibility to all of its citizens, it should not see old people as a priority. So we're using because at the beginning of the sentence. Some people say you shouldn't because it's bad grammar, but it's okay. When people get older, they should make provisions for their care so that they do not have to rely on the government. So that. Once people retire, the government have a responsibility to ensure that they are looked after until they pass away. As we've got, again, our discourse markers here. Rather than rely on the state, as people reach retirement age, they should have saved enough money to provide for their own needs. The powers that be cannot be expected to support all senior citizens, even if they decide to allocate funding to them. It would be wise to provide people with an adequate pension whenever they retire. So many of these sentences can be changed by reversing the clause. The example here, the government should not see old people as a priority because it has a responsibility to all citizens. Sorry. So all we've done is reverse the clauses. One clause is here. The clause begins here and stops here. It has a responsibility. We've put the because in the middle. So we've changed the clause. So this is another way that you can make complex sentences. Passive sentences. There'll be more of these in task 1 than task 2, where we focus on the action and not the thing. So the personal thing doing the action is less important. Examples. More TVs were purchased than radios in 2004. Who's purchasing them? We don't care. The focus is on the TVs and the radios, not the people buying them. This is past passive. If pensioners are given an adequate monthly allowance, they will be well cared for. So we've got present simple passive. If pensions are given, they will be well cared for. Future simple passive. Present simple passive. More of a family's monthly budget was spent on food. Past simple passive, was spent. It has been said that many people believe that the old should take care of themselves. It has been said. Present perfect passive. We can see that most money was needed for everyday items such as food and rent and food, sorry. Past simple passive. The above structures of the passive voice are more than enough to demonstrate your ability to use it in a wide variety of ways. So try and use the passive in a few different ways. Future, present simple, present perfect, past simple. All of those can be made passive. But again, this takes practice. Now we're going to look at conditional sentences using if and would. They serve to look at both sides of an issue or topic. Always useful to widen grammatical range and to set up opposing viewpoints. If you have two opposing viewpoints, this is a very good tool to use because it widens the scope of your sentence. They're used more in task 2 than task 1 due to the fact that task 1 deals with information or data. It's not hypothetical. You look at the data, you say what it represents. So you can't do this in task 1. But task 2, if the government did not help old people after their lifetime of service to the country, it would be disastrous. So if this thing did not happen, this is what would happen. And with these sentences, you can also swap them. We could say it would be disastrous if the government did not help people after their lifetime of service to the country. We could swap it round. So you don't always have to use the same order when you use if and would. It has been said that if the older generation were to sell their properties, they would have adequate funds to support their retirement. If it were up to some people, then the government would abandon pensioners at their greatest time of need. If it were up to people, remember this is what we call hypothetical because it's not a real situation. It's where we imagine or we speculate about something. So, last one. There could be funds made available by the state to administer to people if their circumstances were to change and they needed assistance. So, money is available if this thing happened. We don't know that this thing is happening or it's going to happen. That's why we use if this thing. So this is hypothetical situations. Very good to expand your sentences because you can set up a scenario where there are two opposing views and you can say, if this thing happened, this thing might happen or would happen, should happen. You don't need to use would all the time. You could say, if this thing happened, then I think this thing should happen, or this thing can happen, or this thing would be able to happen. So there are things that you could mix, but just to keep this simple for now, if and would are very useful tools to use together to look at scenarios. And of course, they widen your vocabulary because now you're using conditional structures. Okay, so for task 1 essay example, we'll look at some of the ways the writer can use a wider range of sentence structures, as is possible in task 1. Okay, so charts illustrate the changes. Simple sentence. It is clear that the cost of petrol made up the largest proportion of household spending in 1971, while expenditure on cars was the greatest share of household spending in 2001. Complex sentence because we're using while to connect both the statements. One statement, while, second statement. We join them together. That constitutes a complex sentence. Firstly, discourse marker. This signals the first point. British citizens spent more than a third of their money on petrol and almost a third on furniture, followed by money spent in restaurants, which was precisely a quarter. So, first thing this, then we've used a conjunction and then we've used another discourse marker, followed by, we don't want to say and, so we say and, then we use something else, followed by, or we don't want to say then, because it's too simple. We want to use better grammar. So it was this and this, oops, where is it? This and this, followed by this, and then we're going to talk about this, followed by money spent in restaurants. The money spent in restaurants was precisely a quarter. So which was refers to this. So again, we're making complex sentences. Secondly, after 30 years, in 2001, British citizens spent significantly less money on petrol, furniture and restaurants at 8%, 8% and 14% respectively. So it means in that order, yes? Petrol, furniture, restaurants. Petrol, furniture, restaurants. That's what respectively means. So use these structures in task 1. The greatest proportion of household budgets were spent on cars at more than 40%. So here we have 4 types of sentences in the essay: simple, compound, complex and passive. Were spent. Okay, that's passive. We don't say who spent them. The focus is on the greatest proportion of household budgets, not people. So this was spent, or these were spent on cars. So there's no one doing an action here. It's this receiving an action. So that makes it a passive sentence. We would not normally use conditional sentences because we're just reporting information and not speculating or using hypothetical scenarios. As I said before, in task 1, we're just getting the information and saying what's there. We're not speculating. We're not saying why it is this way and how it could change. And we just don't do that. We just literally report the information. That's why we don't really use conditional. So, for task 2, we can use the complete range of sentence structures. In other words, if people were to accumulate their own savings for their pension age, it would lessen the financial burden on the government. Second conditional. The elderly have to save for retirement and not depend on the state when the time comes. Compound. 2. Join together with and. Since savings-oriented people are not dependent on the state for their living expenses, This may instill a sense of self-respect and pride in them. Complex sentence with discourse. Since is our discourse marker. The early signs of this have been seen in many countries that were forced to raise the retirement age. Past passive. Putting money aside has some personal benefits. Simple sentence. Using all of these structures in your essay will push your grammatical range up much further and satisfy the criteria mentioned earlier. You still have to make sure that you've satisfied the other elements. Make sure your grammar is good, your spelling is good, etc. So it's not only, this is what takes you up higher, but this is not the only thing. You have to combine it with the other things that you need to do in the test or in the essay. Okay, that's the end of this lesson. I know it's a bit long, but take your time, stop the video, go back to it. It's there for you to read, to watch, sorry. So don't worry how long you take over it. Again, subscribe to the channel, comments are very important so we know we're giving you the right information. If you don't tell us whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it helps you, whether it doesn't help you, if you don't tell us these things, we will not know. So click the notification button. When a new video is uploaded, you will be automatically informed. Again, website www.domaggettiielts.com, and we now have a free course site with a grammar course, a 10-hour IELTS course and a 20-hour IELTS course. This is at www.courses.domaggettiielts.com. So thank you very much and see you in the next video. Okay.